Okay, so on notes 3-4, we're going to be solving systems of inequalities. So remember we went over a system. You have 2 or more inequalities on this example. So we're going to be solving them. So on 3-3, when we were graphing only one, we were finding the shaded area, which would be all of the points that would make your inequality true. Okay, so here, when there's 2 or more, you're going to be finding where they have the shaded part in common, where they're both shaded. Okay, so I'm still going to find the intercepts, x and y intercepts. So I'm going to start out with finding the x-intercept of the first one. So remember y is 0, so I'm going to have a 2x minus y. I'm going to put equals 4. So y is 0, so x would equal 2. So that ordered pair would be 2, 0. So it's crossing the x at 2, 0. And then the y-intercept of that same equation, we know x is 0, so cover it up. We get negative y equals 4, so y would equal negative 4. So 0, negative 4. So there's our intercepts. Remember, before you connect them, we talked about we need to look back at the original inequality. Notice it says greater than or equal, so it will be a solid straight line. Make sure that you extend it throughout the whole graph. And then we're going to look and see where we're going to shade. Remember, when we're shading, we're plugging in a test point to see if it would be true or false to know where we need to shade. So I'm going to plug in the same test point that we used on 3-3, which was 0, 0. So I'm going to get a 0 on the left side is greater than or equal to 4, because I'm looking back at that top inequality. 0 is not greater than or equal to 4, so that's false, which means I would need to shade away from the 0, 0. Now, on these problems, since we're having to shade multiple inequalities, I'm just going to draw an arrow below this line, so that way I know this is where I would need to shade, and then I'm only going to shade my actual solution at the end. Okay? But if you want, go ahead and shade below the line, shade the other one, and then see where they're both shaded. So you're more than welcome to shade each one and then make sure you darken the double shaded area. Okay, so let's do x and y intercept on the other inequality that we're given. So we have x minus 2y is less than 10. I'm just going to put equal to 10. And then we know y is 0, so cover that up. So x would equal 10. So 10, 0 would be your x-intercept. And then your y-intercept. So x minus 2y equals 10. I know x is 0. Make sure not to cover the negative up in front of the 2. So y would equal negative 5. So that would be 0, negative 5. Before we connect those points, look at your inequality. Notice it just says less than. It doesn't say equal to. So remember, that does not include the points on the line. So you need to have a dotted line. Make sure to extend it throughout the whole graph. All right, so your test point, still plugging in a 0, 0. It's the easiest point to plug in. I'll get a 0 on the left side is less than 10. That is true, which means I need to shade wherever 0, 0 is at. So if you look at your blue line here, we would need to shade above towards 0, 0. Okay, so your solution is the double shaded area, so where they're both shaded. So notice the pink one is below, the blue one is above. So your double shaded area would be this section here. So when you're solving a regular system of equations, you're trying to find the point or points that they have in common. when you're solving a system of inequalities, you're trying to find all the points that they have in common, which is where they're both shaded. So again, on these, I don't care if you use multiple colors, and you can shade both of them and then darken the double shaded area, or just draw the arrows and then only shade your solution at the end. So you can do it however you want. Okay, so let's look at example 2. Okay, so the first one, notice it just says x is less than 6. We actually had an example like this on 3-3. That means your x-intercept is 6, 0. There's no y here, which means there's no slope. It's undefined slope. So remember, we talked about in order for it to only cross the x at 6, it would have to be a vertical line. Notice that it just says less than, not equal to, so that should be a dotted line. And then if we plug in our test point of 0, 0, which we don't have a y, but we can still plug in for x, 0 is less than 6, which is true. So I would need to shade towards 0, 0, which would be to the left. And again, I like to just draw the arrows and then only shade the solution at the end. Okay, so looking at the second one, I'm going to find the x-intercept. So y is 0, so our x-intercept would be 4, 0. And then y-intercept, x is 0, so y would be 4, so 0, 4. Don't forget, once you've plotted your two intercepts, make sure you look back at your inequality on the original. It says greater than, not equal to, so you will have a dotted line. Okay, so your shading, we're going to plug in a test point of 0, 0. So if we plug into this inequality, we're going to get 0 is greater than 4, which is false. So I do not need to shade wherever 0, 0 is at. So I would need to shade above that line. Okay, we have one more here. So I'm going to find the x-intercept of the third inequality. X plus 2y is less than 8. I know y is 0 when I have an x-intercept, and I keep putting the inequality. Just going to put equal to. So that would be x equals 8. So our intercept would be 8, 0. And then finding the y-intercept. X is 0, so y would equal 4. So 0, 4. And then looking back at your inequality, it's just less than, so it doesn't include the points on the line. So you will have a dotted line. And plugging in your test point, you're going to get 0 is less than 8, which is true. So I would need to shade below. Okay, so we're going to have to figure out where they're all three shaded. If you notice, the pink is to the left, the green is below, the blue is above. So it's actually going to be this triangle here. So that's where they're all three shaded. So if it helps you to shade every single one of them and then darken that triple shaded area on this one, then you can do that, or use multiple colors and then just figure out where they're all 3 shaded. Okay, so to check your solution, you can just plug in any point that's in your shaded area, and it should be true for all 3 of your inequalities. Okay, let's look at the Okay, so we have 3 again. So I have to graph each one. So I'll start with the first one. They're in standard, so I'm going to find the x-intercept. So I know y is 0, so x would be -9. And then the y-intercept. Make sure not to cover up that negative in front of the 3y. So when you divide that, y is going to be +3. So 0, 3. Looking back at your inequality, it's greater, so it doesn't include the points. So you will have a dotted line. Make sure you extend it throughout the graph. Okay, second one, x-intercept. X would be 1, so 1, 0. Y-intercept. X is 0, so make sure not to cover the negative up. Y is going to equal -4. So 0, -4. And it just says greater, not equal to, so it should be dotted line. Excuse me. Okay, so your test point, we're going to get 0 is greater than 4, which is false. So we do not need to shade where 0, 0 is at. So I forgot to shade on the pink one. On the pink one, we need to plug in a test point, my bad. We're going to get 0 is greater than -9, which is true. So I need to shade where 0, 0 is at. And then that last one. So I have x plus 2y is equal to -2. So x would be a -2. And then y-intercept. You're going to get y equals a -1. And that's also dotted because it just says greater. And then plugging in a test point, you're going to get 0 is greater than -2, which is true. So I need to shade where 0, 0 is at, which would be above this line. Okay, so we're trying to find where they're all shaded. So all the points that they all have in common. So the pink is below, the blue is below or to the right of that, and then the green is above. So that would be this section here. So if you can't really see that, it's okay if you shade each one and then just darken your solution at the end, which is where they're all 3 shaded. All right, so you're going to get your assignment 3-4. You need to start working on that. Assignment 3-3 and assignment 3-4 will both be due tomorrow. We will do an activity going over graphing and solving systems graphically using the shading part. Okay, so make sure you're using this class time to work on 3-3 and 3-4.